Good afternoon and welcome. This is going to be a masterclass in the Werner Herzog style. We're going to have a free discussion, so I would encourage everybody to prepare questions and comments, and we will be able to discuss, and Werner will be able to explain a masterclass in a relaxed format. Like many of you, I've been thinking about Werner Herzog for many years now, and so when I was asked to introduce him, I jumped at the chance, but I also later realized that this is not an easy task. He's a man who's written and directed nearly 70 films, fiction and non-fiction, almost 20 operas. He's a poet. He's an actor in series, and he's the author of some exceptional books. He's somebody who, to me, is more like a vast country that I like to go and visit sometimes, and I'm still exploring. He's probably best known, most famous, I think, it would be fair to say, for being somebody who has, in his work, a savage search for the hidden truths of the human condition. He is somebody also who is not afraid to pick fights, to defend the authorship in cinema if he sees it's under attack. But at the same time, he's always done it from the position of being a foot soldier of cinema, not an elitist. When I was casting around for things to say in this introduction, I soon came across the fact that a new creative partner of mine is obsessed with Herzog. In fact, he traveled to Peru to try and see the boat that was used in Fitzcarraldo. I spoke to a BBC commissioning editor I know very well, who's now retired, who after a long conversation said he wished that there were thousands, if not millions, of Herzogs. And it's still flowing. The ideas are still flowing. The films are still coming out. Werner Herzog has had 2 films come out in 2019. One of them about his friendship with Bruce Chatwin. And in that film, there's a concept I've never come across before, which is deranged landscape, which is a landscape that triggers madness. And it's one of those images and ideas that stays with you for days after seeing the film. So there are many reasons why Werner Herzog is a hero of mine, but I'll choose just one, which is when, in the dark night of the soul, in the middle of a production, which is something that everybody who's making anything worthwhile experiences, whether you wake up in the middle of the night in a distant land or in your bed at home, and you're convinced that the production you're directing is heading for disaster, there's really no better patron saint than the spirit of the person I have the honor to introduce. So we would like to have a free and flowing discussion, and I would like to ask the first question, which is, as a documentary filmmaker myself, you've often said, or you have said before, that all your films are just films, and all your documentaries are feature films in disguise. Could you explain what you mean by that?
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for coming. And I thank all the organization for the hospitality and the work behind that. It's not easy to put an event like this together. So, to your question, I think there's so much in the reception of films, in particular in academia, and also among the critics. They want to categorize, and they would say this is a documentary, this is a feature film, and there's a big gap in between. So it doesn't exist for me, because my documentaries, for very, very clear reasons, most of the time are very stylized. Some of them are invented. Some of them are scripted. They are all very well cast, the cast of characters, and that is something that you normally do only in feature film. You find an actor for a role. For example, Bad Lieutenant, it was immediately clear that should be Nicolas Cage. So you do not need much casting, but you know it, but all the other characters have to be cast. So, and I do that in documentaries. And I do it for, and I even start to invent certain elements. I give you one example in the film Lessons of Darkness. I filmed the fires in Kuwait, the first Iraq war, when Iraqi troops invaded Kuwait. It lasted very short time, and when they were defeated and moved back into Iraq, they set every single oil well on fire. So the entire country was burning, the skies were black, and it was not a political event so much for me, yes, of course, but the film, seeing what I see, became some sort of a science fiction film. This cannot be our planet anymore. And I filmed it in a way that in 1 hour of film, there's not a single shot or hardly a shot where you could recognize our planet again. So it's like a cosmic event, a science fiction event. This must be a planet, not ours anymore. And that was the reason why I wanted to elevate the audience to a very high level before they even enter into the film. And before the film begins, there's a written text on the screen, and it is a quote from the French philosopher Blaise Pascal. And the quote says, "The collapse of the stellar universe will occur like creation in grandiose splendor." And this is really a beautiful sentence. And Pascal has made some beautiful short statements and writings about the vastness and the silence of the universe. Now, when you take a good look, actually it is not Blaise Pascal who ever said that, it was me. I've invented the quote, and it fits exactly to the film. And I do believe that Blaise Pascal could not have said it better anyway. So I do this not for cheating an audience, or not for giving fake news. It is for preparing them for a deeper stratum of truth, a level of truth that is not just superficial fact. Yes. Facts do not constitute truth, and that's why I start to invent.
I was reading your Minnesota Declaration again to refresh my memory, and it seems to me that the thing that you objected to was that somebody had said to make a film, or to make a verite film, all you have to do is pick up a camera and be honest.
Yeah, that's utterly stupid. I mean, it's so egregiously stupid that I had to mention it, because filmmaking is something different. It is not just honesty does not create truth. Of course, there's honesty, for example, in cannibalism. There's honesty in human sacrifice. It depends on in which culture you are growing up, in which culture the nexus, the context of your culture. That's and this whole question about honesty, that's very naive, and you hear it in America a lot.
Sure.
It doesn't. Honesty in filmmaking very often is accompanied by deep stupidity.
No, sure. I did detect, I'm reading it again, it was much more to do with the attitude, exactly, that sort of a rather superficial attitude, because again, you also say that, facts, if you look at them deeply, hide truths which are difficult to believe.
Yeah. Facts do not constitute truth. There's a very beautiful thing that the French writer André Gide once wrote, and he says, I modify facts to such a degree that they resemble truth more than reality. And I find this very, very remarkable. And of course, I'm trying to do something that Michelangelo has done. I do not want to compare myself with Michelangelo, but I'm impressed by, for example, the Pietà, and I always point out when I speak about the ecstasy of truth, something where you step outside of yourself and facts do not have such importance anymore. It's more an illumination that has importance. And when you look at Michelangelo's Pietà, you have the Virgin Mary, and in her lap she's holding Christ, her son, taken from the cross. And you look into the face of Christ, it's a face of a 33-year-old man, tormented face. When you look into the face of his mother, the mother is 15, maybe 17. Sure. So now I have to ask you a question. Did Michelangelo try to give you fake news? Or did he try to cheat you? Did he try to lie to you? I do not believe it. He just wanted to point out the inner essence, a deeper inner truth about the Virgin Mary and about her son, who is 33.
Sure.
But the mother is 15.
Yeah. I think it's about the intention, isn't it? It's about the intention of.
Of course,
of course, there is this danger of facts and fake news and the confusion, but it's nothing to do with what you're talking about. Right?
Yes, but you have to be intelligent enough when it comes, for example, to political discourse. And if it comes to power struggles, you better start to verify. You better become smart, and you better start to have parallel and different points of views.
Sure.
You see, that's what's important. And when, for example, recently under Donald Trump in the United States, as I live in the United States, I found it very, very fascinating how things are put out and they are fake news but taken for truth. And I have seen hardly anyone who would somehow verify certain statements through other sources. And in my case, I would immediately go and watch Al Jazeera, for example, or Russian television, or read the full speech of the Pope. You can access it easily on the website of the Vatican. So I would very much like to access, and that's the beauty of the internet. I'd like to access different sources.
Sure.
And find out, but it is your task, and you are born much younger than I am. All of you are younger, and you have grown up, or many of you are very familiar with the internet. I'm not one of those for whom it's completely natural.
Sure.
I'm still a digital, in a way, illiterate or semi-illiterate. Mm-hmm. But I use the internet. I use it for information. I use it for a variety of perspectives. Sure. I use it as a telephone sometimes, because I do not have a cell phone. Wow. So I do not want to absorb and understand reality through applications.
Moving back to other areas, you were a pioneer of cinema, and you're entering your 7th decade of directing. How has the directing for you changed in in these different eras? Because I'm sure it's changed
Well,
many times.
it hasn't really changed that much, because from very early on I felt completely comfortable, for example, to direct actors or to create images and create a story, creating different levels of perception through music. So I have become more fluent, and I have become more like you can become fluent in a language, in a foreign language, and it has been to a great advantage for me that you can shoot very quickly digitally in a very high quality, and it's not very expensive. And you can see the result immediately if you want. Normally, I do not want to see the results right away. Or for example, editing, and there must be filmmakers, young filmmakers among you, you can edit on your own laptop. You do not need a big editing suite and flatbed and celluloid and all this. I'm a man of celluloid. I started with 35 millimeter celluloid, and it's slow and expensive and quite vulnerable as well. So, and today my output is higher than it was 4 decades ago or 5 decades ago, because I simply can, for example, edit I'm exaggerating now, I can edit almost as fast as I'm thinking.
Sure.
And I've done a film in Japan, a feature film which is called Family Romance. And it was almost a one-man film, which is not completely correct.
Because you shot that, didn't you?
I shot it in Japanese language, which I do not speak. So of course I needed an intelligent translator. But I was my own cinematographer, and I had 1 or 2 more people with me. The film was shot in 11 days, a feature film. I shot what I really needed for the screen. And you see, I meet quite often young filmmakers who are completely excited, and they tell me, I shot 450 hours of footage about this or that, and immediately my heart sinks. My God, they do not know what they are doing. They have no clue, and they just let the camera roll. Yes. And I'm not one of those. And if you're a filmmaker, reduce what you're shooting. Every second that you are filming could be the last second that you are filming. So if you have this attitude, then you're already better off. And for Family Romance, I filmed 340 minutes as the entire footage that was shot for the film.
Wow.
And it's a 1.5 hour film.
That's extraordinary.
And it was shown at the Cannes Film Festival in the official selection. It was not in competition.
That's almost an ecological use of film.
Yes, it's ecology also, and it costs much less, and you are faster. And since I had only 300 something minutes, editing was done in 2 weeks. And I've done a film now. I just finished 2 films this year, and I've done them very, very fast, very fluent. And I've written 2 books as well, and I'm very fluent somehow. So my output is much, much higher than ever before.
There is something about sort of taking decisions, and directing and writing has a lot to do with taking decisions. And if you've been taking decisions for such a long time, I suppose they come easily.
They always came easily. I never hesitated to take a decision, because you have a unique situation. Let's say you have actors in front of you. You have a crew that is expensive. They cost hotel, they cost salaries, The equipment costs money each day. Every lens costs a lot of money every day. So you better take decisions right now. And I give you an example. Aquí, the Wrath of God, we filmed at some rapids. The rafts go through rapids. We shot that day on the rapids and had a camp and slept there, and all of a sudden in the morning the level of the river was as much higher as this room here is. And our location was flooded. So what do? I asked some of the native people who live there, I asked, how long does it take until the water is coming down? And he said, mañana, tomorrow. But mañana means, in South America, means a vague future. And I said, aha, yeah, in a week. Yeah, he said, yes, sure, in a week. And I said, maybe rather 2 weeks. And all of a sudden he says, oh, this will take more than 2 weeks. So now you're in a position that you want to continue shooting the next scene, and your location doesn't exist anymore. So within 200 seconds, I rewrote the scene. And what you see now is newly written, but instantly you have to deliver. And you might know that I'm here on a stopover to Lanzarote because I do a workshop with young filmmakers from all over the world. They're all professionals. They can shoot their film, they can edit their film, and each one of them has to make a short film, feature film or documentary or poem, cinema poem, whatever they want to do. But they have, and it will be a short, between 5 and 10 minutes, but they have 9 days to do it. And nobody is allowed to come with a prepared little screenplay or an idea, because in the first meeting, in the very first meeting, I give a framework within it has to happen. I did this 2 years ago in Puerto Maldonado in Peru, and in the first meeting I said, start thinking from now on, from this moment, this is a moment, and you will make a film, and the general theme is fever dreams in the jungle. Start to invent, start to create. And I have 9 days to make that film. On the 10th at the latest, we are watching all the films. And it's not a joke. It's not a joke. They all have to deliver. And I will make sure that every single one is doing a film.
It's remarkable. Would anybody like to ask a question?
I would like to say a few things before we hand it over to the audience, because you seem to be interested into streaming series or into series on television. That's a motto, that's the goal and aim of this festival here. I personally have never done anything like this, with halfway an exception. I've done 8 films on death row in Texas and in Florida about death row inmates who are waiting for execution. And I have done conversations with them, and I have looked into the crimes, and I have made a 9th film, which is a much longer and very complex film. It is called Into the Abyss. And Into the Abyss is such a complex crime with 3 victims, 3 people murdered, 2 perpetrators, 2 murderers, a shootout with police when they were arrested. And I was fascinated by this particular film, which is much longer than the other death row films, because the crime was so incredibly nihilistic. And I was curious. I wanted to understand what was going on. But of course, there's some dark areas, some dark abysses in the human soul that you will never understand, but I tried at least. The second thing that I started to do, or halfway started to do, is a series of feature films called Fordlandia. A production company in Los Angeles approached me to do something about Henry Ford, the automobile maker in the early 20th century. And he wanted to be independent of caoutchouc, of rubber, from the British and from the Malaysian supplies. And he decided to start his own rubber manufacturing in Brazil, in Amazonia. And he acquired a terrain, he acquired some sort of part of the forest which was larger than the state of Tennessee. And of course there was a lot of bribery and a lot of intrigues, because some people opposed giving it to him for almost free. And Henry Ford had the dream of transplanting small-town Americana into the Brazilian jungle. And not only suburbia in small-town America, also its values. Some sort of piety and some sort of very strict religious behavior. You were not allowed to do dancing in the bars. There was no prostitution allowed. It was all Puritan America, and it utterly failed. It utterly failed and ended in a very, very big disaster. And all the thousands of caoutchouc or rubber workers started a rebellion very, very soon. Within a year, there was rebellion. The barefoot workers in the forest wanted to have aguardiente in the bar, and they wanted to have women around. But the worst was the timing of everything. There were these punch clocks, like in factories. When you arrive, you have a card and you let the card punch the time, so that the company would know you have spent only 7.5 hours working instead of 8 hours, because the punch cards would prove it. And when the rebellion started, the first attack was against the clock, against the punch clock. Those were destroyed in their beautiful photos of it. But this is a project which hasn't taken off the ground. It is a project that was somehow stopped by the pandemic. But even before, I had the feeling it went into hibernation. So it's asleep, and I do not know whether it will ever be made into a series.
And this will be a series for a streaming platform? For
a streaming platform, yes. I think streaming platforms ultimately are the best tool, the best distribution system. But of course, television also does it, and I have not seen much on television, nor have I seen much on streaming platforms. I've never been that interested in these forms, but I've seen, because my wife got addicted to a Danish streaming or Danish series. It's called Borgen. Are you familiar with that? Has it been shown here in Spain?
Are there many fans of Borgen? I'm definitely a fan.
Have you seen Borgen? It's intelligent. At least it's well narrated, well acted, and I think it's long over, but it doesn't matter. I found it interesting, and of course there are interesting things going on. And I like it to some degree, although I do not really make it, nor do I really watch it. But there's something interesting going on. We have a tendency, a cultural tendency worldwide to reduction. And in politics or in discourse, very often things are reduced to tweets. Politics, even in the United States, much of the politics was made via tweet. And this is only very, very, very short sentence and short statements. And it's not easy to create politics about complex procedures, complex problems that are out there. And I have been marveling, is this a new art form? Is this a haiku, the haiku of our time? And is possibly Donald Trump the greatest poet of modern haiku? I think he did, at least in his time, at least 20 or 30,000 tweets. And I think they are published, and I really want to read into it. It's I've seen most fascinating things reduced into the form of tweets. And they were effective. They brought changes. So we should not dismiss these short forms, or for example, short forms like the shortest of short forms, I think, is TikTok, which is, what is the maximum length? 10 seconds, 12 seconds?
Even I'm a bit old for that.
Do you know?
No, I'm no expert. No,
how many seconds is TikTok? Can anybody? 10 seconds? 12?
Does anybody know?
Can everybody shout to me, please?
How long is
a TikTok?
Is a TikTok? This is important information for filmmaking. 15. Ah, yeah, okay, 15 seconds. But apparently very young kids, adolescents, kids in puberty they have this desire of representing themselves and being creative. And it's a wonderful tool which doesn't need them to go to film school. They do not have to be literate. They do not need to speak English. They do not, no, it's, you see, if you are in the Arab world, or if you are, let's say, in Botswana and you speak a tribal language, it is wonderful that they can present themselves to the entire world in a short TikTok little artifact. And I'm the last one who would dismiss it. Yes, the level of the message. Normally the level of the message is fairly low, and it has to stay low because you have to meet a common denominator. That's one thing. And secondly, they cannot be elaborate storytelling like in a novel or storytelling like in a movie. And because of that, I do believe that short forms, like you would see it on YouTube, and you see astonishing things. When you look around at YouTube, all of a sudden you stumble across things that are completely astonishing in their beauty. It's absolutely wonderful what you can watch. And for example, crazy cat videos is something that really, when I'm personally really down and had a bad day, I watch some crazy cat videos. So, I think this is the news for this particular masterclass.
Yeah,
I never thought Werner Herzog would be watching cat videos.
Yes, and there's a whole series now. You find it on YouTube, and you have to be intelligent to get the name because I forgot. It's about a cat, It's a Norwegian cat that looks like a grim, real big cat, a beast of a cat. And the cat jumps onto a boat and sits at the stern of the boat. And I think it's a woman who paddles it slowly I think in Berlin, and there are trees and there are houses and a few boats, and you only see how the cat watches the landscape and watches, and you hear the voice of a bird, and all of a sudden the cat looks, and there's such deep serenity in it. There's such a deep sense of I wouldn't say nature, but something you see the world with the eyes of a very attentive, very fierce cat that is completely quiet, and you can see I think every day a new video, and it's a wonderful form, and the cat actually is famous. The cat has 200,000 followers on wherever, but I find this very remarkable, and you all can do the same thing, and it's a new form, and I do believe we had these forms, the forms of serialization. We had it in literature. For example, in the late 18th century, it clearly started with, maybe even before, but what comes to mind is an English writer, Lawrence Sterne, who wrote Tristram Shandy. And Tristram Shandy, in a way, is the beginning of the modern novel. It's a very, very, very unusual writing. And it was published in form of a series of little pamphlets with, let's say, the next 20 pages would arrive. And they became so famous and so in demand that people would, for example, leave the city of Manchester and walk on foot and come against the stagecoach, which would bring the packs of new brochures with a new chapter. And they ran against the coach that brought the mail.
That's right.
And it was a serialization of it.
In the 19th century with Dickens and Balzac, and
yes,
they
but
took off after that.
That comes later.
Yeah,
and
right.
The earliest one that really comes to mind would be Lawrence Sterne.
Sure.
And it's a phenomenal book. I mean, whoever is into literature and wants to understand the origins of modern literature, of modern novel, should better look into Lawrence Sterne. But I do have a suspicion that, and I cannot verify it, that even the Odyssey, 7th century before our time, before Christ, could have been a serialization.
Oh, I think
because
definitely.
It has
definitely. Yeah.
It's not so much the Iliad, but the Odyssey could be, because we apparently know through very intense studies that the Odyssey and including the Iliad is probably a compilation of epic poetry that was floating around. But more than anything, the Odyssey, various station and adventures and stopovers,
Sure.
train stations or harbors. The ship stops here and it stops. It does not stop when the sirens
Sure.
try to lure Odysseus into his death. And so there's one stop after the other, and it may...
They have cliffhangers.
It may have been, yes, it may have been some sort of a very early serialization. But it is complete speculation at the moment from my side. And I cannot verify it. I cannot back it up with any with any studies that I could
Sure.
quote, and I have not done any studies.
There are some, in the Odyssey, there are some incidents where the singer or the storyteller is brought out at the party, and so you can imagine that he could only really have time to sing or to speak one episode.
Sure,
so it's very likely.
exactly, yes, because one episode would be enough for a whole evening, and people to whom you sing actually wanted to eat their schnitzel and have a good drink of wine.
Sure.
You see, that's what happens.
I was going to say, because you mentioned Tristram Shandy before we came out, and the question of episodic storytelling as opposed to a single film. And I know there's an Argentinian director who says that the single film is like a short story, and the series is like a novel.
No, I disagree. But it doesn't matter, but it gives us, the series now gives us a possibility to create long forms, and audiences have moved away from long forms in cinema. And now on streaming and on television as serialization, they have a good life. And it's good because nobody today reads, let's say, Tolstoy novels, 800 pages. Let's say War and Peace. And that's something where you cannot make a movie out of War and Peace. You have to do a whole series. Or the Brothers Karamazov. You can only tackle this either by making a 9.5-hour movie, and nobody goes to the theater to watch a 9.5-hour movie, or you create a different sort of serial content, and it is a very good counterbalance against the very short forms, because the short forms, of course, are problematic to a certain degree. The tweets in politics are problematic, let's say television with their short forms, let's say evening news. When you watch BBC evening news, they have become unwatchable because it's not really that much news anymore. It's part of entertainment industry. And news normally, because they need ratings, they need a lot of audience. It's a holy grail. The holy grail of television is ratings. And because of that, news, when you watch them in the United States, they have become part of the entertainment industry. BBC News have become part of the entertainment industry. It has to go quick, quick, quick. And at the end, inevitably, there has to be a feel-good story. And the feel-good story is, let's say, a tiger mom, a big tiger, a Bengal tiger with 4 kittens and feeding them. They are suckling, and the tiger mother accepts an orphaned little goat who is also suckling on them. That's the absolute highlight of BBC now at the end of news. So, and this is highly suspicious. I don't like it, and it's not the meaning of political news to have a feel-good story at the end.
Sure. Would there be?
Because I think there's not that much
Werner.
feel-good stories out there anyway. But please go ahead and ask questions. We do have a microphone installed. Step up and ask a question. I'm here. I try to answer everything, whatever is coming. But somebody has to be courageous enough to do it. We cannot do it all the time up here.
Thinking of, is there somebody here? Oh, somebody would like to come up.
Yes, please, just go ahead and you can line up, then we do not lose much time in between. I always prefer it to a microphone being handed out to the audience. Please speak in Catalan or in Spanish or in modern Greek. I would understand you.
I'll try to speak in English.
Okay.
Okay, sorry for my language. My name is Maurizio Loi, and I'm from Sardinia Island. In 1962, your first film ever, Heracles.
Maybe you could take your mask off and I can understand what you have. Yeah.
In 1962, your first film ever, Heracles, you shot an extraordinary man who was my friend. And now I'm doing a movie about him and about his life. So in my work, I discovered some things about you and about your Heracles. Maybe you don't know yet. So my question is, do you want to know it?
Well, if you need 5 hours to tell you the story of your film, we should not do it. But if you can make it in a condensed form, please tell me.
Okay, so maybe I tell you later, just to make some suspense, but could you please tell us your experience to make your first film?
Yes, I can, because I knew very early on that I was going to make films. And I was thrown out from all offices of producers because I was not even grown up yet. My puberty was late, and one production company, when I walked in, they looked beyond me, so as if the father had come into town with his child, but there was only the child. And they looked beyond me, and one of them finally notices that there's only the child there, and he laughs and says, the kindergarten is trying to make movies nowadays. So I was literally kindergarten when I started to be into it seriously. And I started to earn money. I worked as a welder in a steel factory. And so I had to finance my own films. And because of that, I was also clear that I would not go to film school. I've always been an autodidacta, self-taught. And I just went out and made my first, not only the first 3 or 4 short films, believing this was my film school. By doing it, learn it. And my very first film, Heracles, about a strong man, is more an exercise in editing. Materials that never would fit together, bring it nevertheless into a story, into something coherent. So, and of course the film is not good. And my next film, and so they are all not really good. But it's interesting to see today, for me it's interesting to see how I started to learn about cinema by doing it. And that was my experience. And a few years later, when I was 24, I made my first long feature film, Signs of Life. And it came with great ease then. But even the first films came with ease. But about your film, can you tell me about the connection to my very first?
I'd prefer to tell later, because I don't want to make spoiler with your public.
Okay.
If it's possible.
Very hard, because I will be in Lanzarote very, very soon.
Okay.
So you have to come to Lanzarote and find me there, or you find me next time. I will be probably in the, where am I going to be? Probably somewhere in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco, and in Tierra del Fuego, the Chilean side of it, south of Puerto Montt.
Okay.
So if you are, the country is narrow. You see, it's only a strip of land, and the road stops a little bit south of Puerto Montt. If you come on foot, you cannot miss me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
But
Would somebody else
just
like to
one
ask?
second, one more thing. No matter what it is, I wish you best of luck. Just do mobilize everything that's in you, and you will make a good film.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hola, hola, hola. Yeah?
Sí.
Hi, Mr. Herzog. Hi. Hopefully, I'm going to try to be concise. I'm going to try to combine two questions into one. Well, first of all, thank you for being here. So what do you think right now, or I guess in your entire career, of the festival circuit, the film festival circuit, and, you know, sort of like the power structures that we know are behind those festivals? And I ask that because, you know, usually, or at least right now, documentary filmmaking is trying to be, or maybe before, like a few decades ago, you know, you would have people from Europe, documentary filmmakers from France or from Europe in general, go to non-Western countries and produce documentary films. And, you know, nowadays, that's my experience at least as an emerging filmmaker, is that people don't want to necessarily watch, they don't want to watch so documentaries. They basically want to watch documentaries made by local filmmakers because they think past documentaries was sort of like a cultural dominance between West and non-West countries. And I asked this because I have a documentary that my first feature that I'm developing, and it's about an indigenous person in Mexico. I'm not Mexican and I'm not indigenous, but I really think, like my film, I want to develop some kind of, for me, filmmaking is about a cultural bridge, about bringing together different cultures, and especially documentary filmmaking. But nowadays, I mean, my experience, it's not, I mean, I guess in the festival circuit, it's not that well seen that, you know, you have someone, basically a man, white male person coming to document an indigenous person.
Yeah, we have to sort out because there are several layers of your question. No, it's fine. First of all, you speak about festivals and the power structures behind festivals.
Right, I only asked this because of the money behind festivals that usually are the ones that...
Not necessarily. Some of the festivals like Telluride, there's not much money behind it. But number one, never, ever, ever, ever make a film for a festival. Never, ever, ever, ever hope to put your film into this or that festival. My advice is, if they do not accept your film, you just start your own festival. That's how I and I'm not saying that randomly, because I've started my own film production company when nobody wanted to produce my films. And until today, my last films, I paid out of my own pocket with money that I earned, for example, in The Mandalorian. Some of the money, it's not much money that they pay you, but I earned some, and some of that money went into a new film. So start your own production company if necessary. And in Germany, in the 1970s, German filmmakers joined and started their own distribution company. So that's something which you have to take initiatives and forget about the power structures, festivals, film production, distribution. Create it yourself. You are the young generation. You have to create your own outlet, and you are at the moment at a point where you have massive shifts, and you have to be smart enough to put that, shape it in your favor, shape the internet in your favor. And if the internet doesn't respond, create your own internet. So you have to do these things. There's no way out of it. So, and secondly, of course, you are speaking about a film you are planning with indigenous or about indigenous people in Mexico. Where in Mexico, in the south, or where? Yeah,
Chiapas, in the south.
Chiapas, yeah.
You probably heard.
Which group, which ethnic group
It's
is
just one. It's a young man who wants to become a professional boxer.
it? Yeah. Which language does the young man speak?
No, he speaks Spanish.
He speaks not an indigenous language.
I mean, he barely speaks it, but his native language is Spanish.
Because I very much I personally define indigenous people by their language and their culture. So if your young man has lost his roots in culture of his indigenous society and indigenous culture, of course you have a figure, a person who is in some sort of transition. Probably not that easy. And in your case, I wouldn't be afraid that there's a trend, but it's a very fancy trend. You cannot make a film about, let's say, African Americans because you are not African Americans. Nonsense. Of course you can make a film about African Americans. Or, am I allowed to make a film about women? Yes, I can. And just thinking about what would the world be without women and only men, it would be unbearable. It would be intolerable. And because of that, men should make films about women. And women should make, of course, I applaud that there are many more young female filmmakers now emerging, and they have the right to do it, but they shouldn't. I hope they do not make films only about women. I hope they make films about men. So, and in this case, your project, don't be afraid that you're not indigenous. Your own indigenous protagonist doesn't have the culture, fully the culture of his indigenous group anymore, apparently.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Best of luck. Yeah.
My name is Hector. Hello. I wanted to ask you, when I first saw your movies many years ago, it was in this wave of German cinema. I don't know if you follow what's happening in this field in your country now, but I miss this voice of German cinema as a culture, you know, mm-hmm. And if you do follow, I would like to know your opinion.
Well, I never belonged really to this renaissance of German cinema. After the war, it was a young generation that was the first generation that had grown up, had become 25 years old or so, and they started to articulate themselves in cinema. And they had a different cinema in mind. It was not the cinema of barbarism. During the time of the Nazis, most of film culture somehow was on the side of the barbaric regime. And it took 25 years or so, a quarter of a century, until Germany started to re-articulate itself in cinema. And much of it was a very German sort of movement, or I wouldn't even call it movement, but some sort of a renaissance. And my experiences in life and in the world were always in a way different. And I never felt that much as a German anyway. So I always said, you all think I'm new German cinema. No, it's not true. I'm Bavarian cinema. I'm Bavarian cinema in the way, for example, Scottish people would say, no, I'm Scottish. I'm a Scottish poet, not a British poet. Or the same way you would say, I'm a filmmaker from Catalonia, not from Spain. So you have a cultural identity. And as a filmmaker, if you're a filmmaker, you may have problems to be considered and to be labeled a Spanish filmmaker. You may insist, no, I'm Catalan. I speak my own dialect. I have my own history. So, and you also should bear in mind that in Germany there was never a common subject, nor was there ever a common style. You had that, for example, in neorealism in Italy after the war. The subjects were social sort of problematic things in society, and they had a style, neorealism. It didn't exist in Germany. There were various styles like Fassbinder or Schlöndorff or me, or you just name it, 50 different styles. And I think it was good that we were not coherent. And today I do not really know what's going on. I have not seen a German film in the last, I think, 18 or 20 years. So, but I do not see many films anyway. It's not just that I do not see German films. I do not see films, not at all, but maybe 3-4 films per year.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hi, Werner. My name is Marcus, and I make podcasts for a living. Quick question. How did you avoid falling into the trap of perfectionism?
Can you speak a little bit louder?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me get closer. How did you avoid falling into the trap of perfectionism and sort of ever bigger budgets as time went by, as your career progressed? And second question, if you had the job today to talk about Spanish colonialism in a movie, or to broach the theme, what sort of themes would you try and explore, to get new, interesting narratives about?
Yeah. Okay, first question about traps. I know exactly what you mean, although it's a vague sort of thing. What are the traps? I feel like having walked on a tightrope, just on a wire, and left and right there were abysses, and I didn't even notice. I just walked on, because I never was part of any trend. So you watch out, what are the trends? And you see it very quickly. You see the trends instantly on the internet. You see the trends on television, for example. So you don't need to follow every trend. That's one thing. And of course, what I always liked, and where I was always suspicious, is when films were technically too perfect and too slick. And you can learn a lot by watching, for example, television, and you watch the commercials. You watch the commercials because they have a condensed message in 15 or in 30 seconds. And they're utterly slick and perfectionist sort of cinema. It is not cinema, it is an attempt. It is an attempt to persuade you to more consumerism. So there's an evil, something that will destroy, it destroys us, because the reasons for climate change and for depleting resources on our planet and dying away of species and so has two reasons, two fundamental reasons. Number one, we are too many human beings on this planet. We take 1.5 times the resources that this planet can deliver. And the second is almost every single one in almost every country is in a culture of consumerism. And you have to be very, very careful. For example, what can you do? Everybody always asks about politics to do something. Fridays for future, but but you better do something yourself. Don't throw away food. As such, in America, 45% of food is being thrown away. You better manage your fridge better, or you better ask for a smaller portion in the restaurant that you really eat. So, in the slickness and perfectionism of commercials corresponds exactly with something deeply destructive. So you have to learn from commercials and avoid it. You have to avoid what they are doing. And you have to avoid, in commercials, for example, they use landscapes as a scenic backdrop to sell a product. So you have the Amazonian rainforest as a backdrop for, let's say, a shampoo or for a perfume or something. So be suspicious. You have to be suspicious. And when I film the jungle, it is not a scenic backdrop to sell something. It is an inner landscape. It is a landscape of our soul. So move away from the perfectionism. Move away from the trap of being slick and everybody would find it great. And you even find feature films today that are made like commercials. The techniques, the style is like the style of commercials. And I really am disgusted by these films. I don't like them. And go and see, for example, as a contrast, see a film, or 3 films actually, a mini-series made in the mid-1950s by Satyajit Ray, the Bengal filmmaker, Apu trilogy. And there's nothing slick, there's only truth. There's only looking into tiny village, a boy growing up in a small village in rural India, and you recognize yourself. Because there's something that is not slick and not perfect, and yet there's something that comes across directly into your soul. And that's what you have to try. That's my advice. And,
Hola, good evening. My name is Jose, and well, I have 2 questions. The first one.
Can you speak a little bit
yes.
louder? Yeah.
My first question, a few years ago I saw a conference by editor Joe Bini. And,
by whom?
By the editor Joe Bini, which I understand
okay, sorry.
your collaborator.
Yeah.
He was talking about how you two made, well, he edited Grizzle Man. And 25
more films.
Yeah.
With me here.
Yeah, but I was especially curious about this one because he mentioned, I was curiously about it because, as you mentioned, you are your own cinematographer. And in this movie, not only is not that you shot the footage of Kevin, of the guy who died by the bear, but
Timothy Treadwell.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Sorry. Well, you got all that footage, and my question is, how do you work with an editor with footage that you actually didn't shoot, at the time to create a movie? Yeah. And if you allow me, the second thing,
Can I answer the first question before
Certainly,
we
yeah.
get confused?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, Joe Bini is a wonderful editor, and we did Grizzly Man together. But if you look at the film, half the film is shot by me. The other half is footage by the real impressive sort of elements are Timothy Treadwell, who would film a 1,000-pound grizzly bear as close as I'm to you, and would even touch the face of the bear or sing a song to the bear, completely confused about what constitutes wild nature. So, and I had no problem whatsoever to make the film because there was incredible footage, but no filmmaker anymore. Timothy Treadwell was already 10 months dead. He was eaten by a bear, and he was eaten together with his girlfriend, who never wanted to be among bears. So no, I had no problem whatsoever, and I even have an ongoing argument with Timothy Treadwell because I disagree with his opinions, and he's not around anymore. And I had absolutely no problem. And I would like to add something because that's a film I made, I think something like almost 20 years ago. When was Grizzly Man released?
Early 90s. No?
I think it's 2005. I'm not sure.
2005,
I
so
think so.
15, 16 years ago. Because at the moment it's a very interesting thing because I'm working at a new film which is called The Fire Within. And The Fire Within is footage shot by a French couple, husband and wife, Katja and Maurice Kraft, Krafft, Katja and Maurice Kraft. And they shot unbelievable footage around volcanoes, but they went too close. And there were somehow the daredevils in cinema or on French television or international television. In a way, they gave up being scientists and played the daredevils. Of course, they wanted to draw attention to the dangers of volcanoes. And the general public in Indonesia started to become much more alert, and catastrophes were not as severe anymore because evacuations were taken seriously. And I put this film together as a requiem. And you cannot categorize the film. It's not a feature film, it is not a documentary, but it's like a musical requiem for Katja and Maurice Kraft. And again, it's footage that I did not shoot myself. And it's footage which they cannot make into a film because they died together in Japan in 1991, 30 years ago. And they shot in celluloid, 16 millimeter celluloid. And I have found materials that are unbelievably beautiful. And I want to make this film for them who cannot do the film anymore. They died in the same, it's called a pyroclastic flow. It's searing clouds that come over you at high velocity and extremely hot, and you are dead. You are roasted in 10 seconds. So, and they died together. And I make a film that they cannot make anymore, but I make it as a requiem. Okay. So if you come across something like this ever in your life, as a filmmaker, do not hesitate. Take charge. Do something about it, because who else would do it?
Okay.
You had a second question.
It's not really a question. I had a present for you. My wife is a filmmaker, and she's from China. Her movie got censored, and we were kindly prosecuted by the Chinese authorities. I know you only watch 3 or 4 movies a year, but if you...
do you have a DVD or a Blu-ray?
It's a Blu-ray, yeah.
Okay, good. Can you leave it here?
Certainly. Yeah. Thank you.
I think I cannot escape my cable here, but leave it. Please leave it here. I will pick it up and take it with me. Thank you very much. If you could... Now, can you bring it? Thank you very much. But it is it a film your wife did, or were you a collaborator in the film?
He's over there.
See, here he is. Okay. Well, we'll see. Okay. Please, go ahead.
Sí, hola, bona nit, Werner. M'expresso amb poca fluidesa en llengua anglesa, preferiria parlar en llengua catalana, no sé si és possible per la traducció.
Can you speak a little bit louder? I do not hear you well.
He would like to speak in Catalan.
Yeah, no, that's fine. probably understand Catalan as well. I do understand some Spanish.
Fantàstic.
Please speak Catalan.
Molt bé, parlaré a poc, doncs. Ens ha dit al començament que podíem venir aquí a parlar de qualsevol aspecte relacionat amb el seu cinema, i això m'ha fet animar. I volia comentar algunes de les seves primeres pel·lícules, algun del seu primer documental. Ara explicaré per què. Em vull referir en primer lloc a una pel·lícula que aquí es va estrenar amb el títol El país del silenci i de l'obscuritat. Està referit al treball amb una dona sorda i cega. Després també volia comentar, hi ha una altra pel·lícula que és, aquí es va estrenar com a Tots els nans van començar petits. Totes les persones van començar. Fins i tot hi ha un altre títol, El futur obstruït. Es tracta de documentals, de pel·lícules sobre persones amb discapacitat, sobre persones, en tot cas, diferents. Sembla que aquest és un element molt important, perquè després jo crec que trobarem també aquestes persones, aquest personatge, en pel·lícules molt més conegudes com són Aguirre, vostè n'ha parlat abans, són Fitzcarraldo, Wojciech, Strozek. Recordo l'escena final de la pel·lícula Cobra Verda, en la que un noi amb discapacitat física camina per la sorra en una escena preciosa. Potser després aquesta idea del cinema sobre la incomunicació, però sobretot sobre les persones diferents, les persones amb dificultats per estar dins de la societat, jo crec que és un element molt important, especialment en el seu primer cinema. Potser després ha quedat més diluït. Ho retrobem de totes maneres en una pel·lícula a la que acaba de fer referència, que és Grizzly Man. Aquesta persona també és una persona incomunicada. M'agradaria que pogués fer un comentari, una reflexió sobre aquesta qüestió. Jo crec que el seu interès, la seva fascinació per aquestes persones, els personatges diferents, que no tenen lloc d'alguna manera.
Well, it's not easy to answer because, of course, you are naming quite a few films. And the first film you mentioned is País del Silencio y de la Oscuridad, Land of Silence and Darkness. I can only say it in Spanish, I'm sorry. And of course, you spoke about even dwarfs started small, and Fitzcarraldo and Strozek, and later Timothy Treadwell, and so. Yes, there is something in common, but it's not. Of course, all these persons have certain deficits. For example, the protagonist in Land of Silence and Darkness she's blind, she cannot see you, and she cannot hear at the same time. So you cannot signal to her, and you cannot shout at her. She would be incommunicado. You can only use a tactile alphabet by typing in, like in a typewriter, into her fingers. That's the only form of communication. But I think I'm not showing them because Land of Silence and Darkness, because of the deficits, rather because of the inner power of this woman who is defiant, who is standing up against this fate, that she cannot speak, that she cannot hear, that she cannot see. And yet she takes care of others who are deaf and blind at the same time. And this is something very heroic. You see, it's heroic what she is doing. And what Fitzcarraldo is doing, as strange as it may sound, creating opera in the jungle, is something heroic. And at the same time, maybe the common thing in all these stories and figures is not as much the deficit, but much more the heroism, and much more the illumination and the vision that these figures are following. That's probably more essential for me. And of course, you can add maybe 15 more titles of films, and what you say would still be correct. It's certainly correct what you are saying, because as different as the subjects and the protagonists are, they have one thing in common, and that's a worldview. There's a vision about, or trying to understand, what is our human condition? Where are we? Who are we? What are we? So they're very humanistic, a very humanistic approach, not a political approach, not a whatever media approach. It's something much deeper. And because of that, I'm not confused that you throw 6, 7 titles at me. They belong together. These films belong together, and you see something common in them, and I think you are right. I see other things in common in them, and I'm also partially right. So thank you very much for your observation.
Thank you very much.
Hello, hello.
Yeah.
Sorry. Should I leave my mask or? Okay. Before I ask you my questions, I just want to tell you something. So I'm from Syria, and as
from
you can,
from where in Syria?
I'm from Damascus.
Ah, okay.
And as you can imagine, sometimes things can get very difficult, but throughout the years, I came across something that you said. I was reading it, I was at home, and more or less, someone was asking you, why didn't you give up on your projects, because they were very difficult to create. And you said, and I'm paraphrasing, that to give up on your project is to give up on your dreams, and you don't want to be a person who lives without his dreams.
Yes, correct.
I don't know if you remember,
yes.
But anyway, I want to thank you for that, because when I read it, it had a huge impact on me, and it really helped me keep going. So thank you for all of your work, and for being so open about your process. That is my first thing that I want to say. I actually have a few questions. Throughout your career, you have been very brave and courageous and very determined, to say the least. So I want to ask you, how do you deal with fear and doubt? Because they come in a lot of forms. And I know sometimes they can be healthy, but most of the times we don't know how to deal with them.
Doubt. It does not really occur to me. Or fear, it's not in my vocabulary. Of course, there's something unhealthy about it, because I'm convinced what I'm doing is really good.
Okay.
So I made, and while I'm doing it, but sometimes this kind of absolute self-confidence that I have sounds like crazy, but it is not, because I have such a clear vision. I have such a clear vision, and I see an entire film like you see it on the screen, and I try to describe it, and I try to grab a camera and actors and put it and create what I see in my vision. So, and the vision itself is there, and it comes with great vehemence. And you speak about career, which is wrong. I never had a career. Career means something different. You are learning a profession. You go to film school, and then you have learned the profession, and then you start to make films, and you make a smaller film first, and then you make this and that, and then you hope that a Hollywood studio would finance and produce your film. So it's never been in my case. I have never had a career. I never planned my next step, what I should do. And I'm somebody who is, I have a sense of duty. And when something, a vision and a film comes with such vehemence at me, I do not evade it. I do not hide away. And I start to confront it, and I'm doing it. So, and because it's so clear, why should I have doubts? And I've been a storyteller from very early on, and I know I'm a good storyteller. Other films, Hollywood, for example, is much better with digital effects. They're really good at that. And they're good with what they call star value. So to have all the big Hollywood stars in one film, if possible. So I've never been into that. But I'm a storyteller, and I know what constitutes a real good story. So because of that, there has never been real doubt. It does not occur to me.
So what constitutes a really good story?
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say...
No.
Sorry, just
Oh,
because
it's okay.
I think as time is beginning to run a little bit short,
okay.
But
we could be here
let's.
for much longer.
I want to answer it because you cannot answer the. Nobody will be able to answer it. But my answer is, you will find out very soon when you tell stories to 3.5-year-olds, 4-year-olds who have a very short attention span, and the way you have to tell a story to a 4-year-old. That's one thing. The other one, if you're a filmmaker, you have to read. It's not that you need to see so many films. You have to read literature for concepts, for timing, for poetry, for dialogue, for storytelling. So my advice is read. So that's my advice.
I'm sorry, I have a small one.
Thank you very much. No, I'm sorry, but there are too many other people, I think. As we haven't got that much time left, if I could ask everybody to just ask one question, one short, reasonably short question, and then I think we can get through everybody.
Let's see. Okay.
Hello, Mr. Herzog and Mr. Justin. Congratulations for your works and for your documentaries also. And well, welcome to Barcelona also. Yes, I want to question, a small question. If it's difficult to shoot Aguirre, Words of the God, in that time, in the forest, with the humidity, with this still with this camera, no, of the film, not like now, it's digital, no. It was so difficult, true, and this is the problem. This is maybe was the problem with Klaus Kinski in the shot. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Sometimes the problems accumulate. There was no money. There was no enough time. There was a madman playing the part, how to domesticate the beast, or make his insanity productive for a screen. And the craze of the man should not be at evening at dinner table, where he would smash all the plates and destroy the kitchen. So that's not on the screen. I want his insanity on the screen, so to steer it in the right way, that was the thing. But when, again, there was a very clear vision, and no matter what you throw at me or what came at me, I would deal with it. And as a filmmaker, whatever, try to find out where the problems are, deal with them before they really become big, before they become too big to handle. So instantaneously face the problem and deal with whatever comes at you. So.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Clara. I'm a film editor And you've just talked about Joe. You've also worked with several incredible editors, Marco, other much more.
Marco Capalbo,
Yeah.
Beate Meinka, Yellinghaus.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I wanted to ask you, what do you expect from an editor? What do you ask for in your editors? Only that.
Number one, they have to have an instant understanding what is the best of the material. So you do not superimpose ideas and force the material, the filmed material, into a shape. You have to be that little and together with your editor, and you watch the material, and all of a sudden the most unexpected comes out of it, and you deal with that. So a sense for the quality of material. Second, a sense of rhythm. I like when an editor is also a musician. Marco Capalbo is a cello player and a composer. Joe Beanie has been a guitar player. It's always good when they are also into music. You have to be also ruthless, reckless with footage. You have a wonderful sequence, and I had one of the best sequences I ever shot was for Kaspar Hauser, almost 7 minutes long, and it still is one of the best things I ever filmed and was edited. But in the context of the whole film, it somehow held up the flow of the film. And the editor, Beate Meinka Yellinghaus, said, throw it out. Just throw it out, and I did. And she would immediately understand that footage was not good and at the time on a flatbed celluloid, and you feed it in and you wind it up on loops, and she plays it 3 times the speed and says, everything is bad, throw it out. And 3 times the speed she understood it. And I said, oh, no, let's... And 3 weeks later we edited this whole roll of 12 minutes material, and it was bad. She was right. So I'm not looking for a yes woman or a yes man. I'm looking for somebody who is independent and strong and knows about rhythm, knows about storytelling, is fearless in throwing things out that are even most beautiful. If necessary, you have to do it. So.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul. I'm 20. I'm studying cinema in Barcelona, and I'm still finding my way to do cinema, but at the same time I don't see myself doing anything else than cinema in my life. So apart from read, I wanted to know the best advice you think you can give to young people who like movies or young filmmakers. Thank you.
Film school is not the ultimate sort of form to get a pathway into cinema. So my advice is, yes, use the film school, use the tools. There are cameras, use them. There's editing facilities, use them. There's a mixing studio for sound, use it. You see, you have to be a fish in murky waters, like a fish that is waiting for prey and going out. Otherwise, I would say give up film school as quickly as you think you can and go into filmmaking,
Okay,
learn,
thanks.
give it up if you can. Because it's easy and inexpensive to make cinema. You can now in Lanzarote, all the young filmmakers, all the young professionals, they make a film, and it's for making these films doesn't cost, because they have a little digital camera and they have a laptop and a microphone, and they can make a film. And the film itself doesn't cost them anything. So go out and make, you see in film school, you can make a film every fortnight. So in a year you can make 30 films. While you're in film school, they may ask you, yes, give us a film at the end of the semester or of the end of the year. I would give them 25 films. That's what you should do.
Thank you very much.
First of all, I want to thank you for all of your work, because it has been a really big thing in my life. So it's as simple as that. And then I want to ask you about the influence of literature in your work. That past question you asked about the what about your work, the influence of literature in your work, and if you want to name some of the books that you personally like, with no...
Okay, yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay, influence of literature, yes, in general, for conceptual thinking, for storytelling, for dialogue, as I mentioned. That's a huge, important thing. Only twice in my life I have made films based on literature. One is Wojciech. It's a drama fragment by Georg Büchner, early 1820 or so. And one was an adaptation of Bruce Chatwin's The Viceroy of Widar, which is Cobra Verde. But that's not so important. It's probably more that it's a way to experience the world with a mind of somebody else. You are participating in the world that is there in literature, in writing. And it can be poetry, or it can be a novel, can be anything. And since you're a filmmaker, there's one book that has to become your Bible, and that's A Peregrine by J.A. Baker. It's a book that was, I think, published in 1967. An unknown man who probably worked in a library or so, we don't know, and probably was ill, went out and watched peregrines in eastern England, the falcons, peregrine falcons. And why I advise you to everyone who has to do with storytelling or art in general, number one, the observations are of such intensity I've never seen anywhere in literature. Number two, the observations are with such passion. He's the most passionate observer that you can ever see. And when you as a filmmaker observe the world, or you are with some people with whom you are making films, you have to immerse yourself. You have to be curious to the last to the last ounce of your existence. So the passion, the intensity and passion of observation, and above all, he writes prose. He writes prose as good as the best of Joseph Conrad, for example. So it's what J.A. I don't even know what his first names are. J.A. Baker, The Peregrine. Try to read it in English because it's not easy to translate. And it's just diaries. It's only diaries. And some days are completely boring. Some days are completely boring, and there's only some tractors. Humans never factor in the book. is only interested in the birds. And it's absolutely, when you read this book, you will know immediately what I mean. And that should be your guidance.
Thank you so much.
Hello. My name is Anik. Considering your filmography, I hope you won't be offended if I ask you about that specific film, but I was wondering what attracted you to Incident at Loch Ness.
I was invited by a friend of mine who is a writer and director, Zach Penn, one of the darlings of Hollywood as a screenwriter. He has written all the screenplays for the X-Men, for example. And he simply invited me, and I liked the idea that the playing with fiction, with a fictional character as if he was a true character. In other words, I'm playing myself, visibly myself, but in a role that I never had, and in a way I would never act. So it's some sort of a complete performance, and it is a hoax within a hoax within a hoax. And I liked the approach, and we just went out and made the film. Not much. I was invited, and with very great intensity, and I enjoyed the making of the film.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, as I can imagine, you must have a really particular path, and maybe in this path in life, you've had to break relationships with people you loved to follow that path, or maybe I don't know, maybe you felt real alone, or I know you said you didn't have fear and doubt, but for me it's hard to imagine, to face that you have to abandon someone to follow that path, and I don't know if you've been in that situation.
Yes, it is a difficult profession, and you come into conflict with life. It happens easily, and I give you one example. I made a film spontaneously. I made La Soufrière, a volcano that was about to explode. And I read in the newspaper, among miscellaneous, I read the mountain was just about to explode, but one black poor farmer had refused to be evacuated. So I had the feeling he had a different attitude towards death. And by the way, I read these short newspaper articles to Beate Meinker, the editor, when she was preparing the rolls of film. And I said, one should go and make a film about this man. And we worked the morning, and then all of a sudden she stops the machine and she says, why not? And I had forgotten, and she says, why don't you make that film? And I said, oh yeah, I should do that. And I called home. I called my home, my wife. And I had a child who was 2 years old only, a little, wonderful little boy who just had started to speak. And I'm calling home, and I ask, is my passport still valid? Has it expired or not? And my wife says, yes, it's still valid. And I said, I'm rushing home, I need my passport. I'm going to Paris, and I will fly to the Caribbean. And she says, what for? And I said, a volcano. And I picked up my passport, and my little child and my wife did not know if I would come back. So, in other words, there's a conflict. There's a very, very deep conflict. What is important in your life, and how much, and it has, things like this have not been good to marriage. So, and it's very hard to somehow maneuver private life and the risks of filmmaking, financial risks. Every single film could have been the end of my let's say, bourgeois existence, my income. Every single film until today can be the end of my days. But I have to add, you have to look out for a real partner, and I have been lucky, and I met my wife now 26 years and 15 days ago. And I'm very lucky. I'm just a blessed man. So I wish you never get into these deep conflicts, and I wish you a partner where you, for the rest of your life, feel that it can't get any better. That's what I wish you.
Thank you.
Hi, a little bit of a personal question. How do you feel now when you think of the deaths that occur in the making of Fitzcarraldo all those many years ago?
It is terrible, but these deaths were not related to the making of the film. We had a big medical outpost that we built, and we treated lots of people, and an old woman died from anemia, but she died right next to me, and she was one of the extras. She was not working right now, and we had another fatality. We had canoes, dugout canoes, and since people, many of them could not swim, we secured the canoes high up on dry land and even chained them together with a chain. And two young men somehow managed to rip one out and steal one of the canoes. Although I had given orders, nobody takes out any of these canoes if you cannot swim. And they're only for the filming. And so two young men took one of the canoes and they capsized, and one of them died, one of them drowned. We never actually found his body. And this is terrible. And your question probably comes because Les Blanc, a wonderful filmmaker in the United States, he made a film, Burden of Dreams. And in the film I'm saying I should rather go to a lunatic asylum after this film, and even people have lost their lives, and that's where he cuts, and it's not explained. And I said to him, Les, this may lead to misunderstandings. Because for a decade people would come and say, you pig, you made a film where you pushed people into their death just for a fucking film. And you see, you have to live with that. And the film did not explain the circumstances of that. And we had one catastrophe after the other. We had 2 plane crashes, but everybody survived. We had a border war between Peru and Ecuador, and my camp was attacked for 1,100 people that I had built and was burned down. So it was real. It was not just invented disasters. It was very, very much for real. And you have to have the inner strength to keep on doing what you do. Actually, after Fitzcarraldo, for a while, I thought I shouldn't make films anymore. It's not worth it. I should rather be, let's say, a farmer who raises cattle. It's always dignified. When you look at a farmer who makes wine or raises goats, it's always dignified work. Cinema very often is not dignified. So you have to live with that.
How can you?
Because I have thought about my life and my work, and I'm trying to be a good soldier. And I mean not in the military sense of the word, meaning a sense of responsibility, a sense of vigilance, a sense of duty. And I'm doing a workshop with young filmmakers because so many are coming at me and want to be my assistant or want to have my advice. It's a sense of duty that I'm doing it because I have more experience than you have made. The only distinction between us is that in numbers I have made more films than you. And from this experience I can pass on certain things. You can avoid some of the mistakes I have made. So it's a sense of duty, and I know that I'm a good soldier of cinema, and I'm gonna remain a good soldier of cinema, and I think I will not retire. You will carry me out from a set feet first.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. My name's Julian. I'm studying dramatic art here in Barcelona, Institut del Teatro. So my question for you would be, what must an actress have, or what do you think a director looks for in an actress for working?
Yeah. That's a very, very hard question. As a director, you have to have the capability to understand the heart of men. And when I say men, I mean mankind, I mean women. Of course, you have to, but I say it the old-fashioned way. You have to understand the heart of men. And it came to me because of hardships and of traveling on foot and understanding, having been hungry as a child, to really be starving, that has formed me, and having been locked away in prison for very short times, but being not free anymore and being in a prison in Africa. So those are things where you start to understand the soul or the heart of human beings. And seeing that, then I see immediately there's something in this person, in this actress, or in this child, or in this actor. So I've never made real mistakes in casting. So it's a quality you cannot describe, but you have to have it. And there are certain caveats. I try to avoid actors or actresses who are purely theater. I'm not a spectator of theater, and it has always been disappointing for me. I do not believe a single word that any of the actors on a stage is shouting out to an audience. I've never trusted in them. And very often it is, for a filmmaker, it is harder to work with trained theater actors, to get the training out of them and only confront the soul of the person. So that's the difficulty. And I'm trying to avoid actors and actresses who come from certain ideology, like the actor studio, the method acting. They are trouble. They are untalented and they are trouble.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, this is a pretty simple question. Your masterclass has inspired me in many different ways. And I was just wondering, to you as a long-term creator, what's your source of inspiration?
I don't know. I do not. The question of inspiration is foreign to me, because things are coming at me. And as I said, there's a certain vehemence. There are things coming at me, and some of them are okay, yes, and I like to see and I like to hear a story or come across a person or so, fine, but sometimes there's something with a very deep vehemence, and I face it, and I start to transform it into a film. But it's not only, you shouldn't only speak about filmmaking. It's similar with the things that I'm writing. And since 40 years, I keep saying my prose and my poetry will probably live longer than my films. Physically, they will have a longer life. If I'm right or wrong, I don't know. Then certain things, challenges that I've taken, like doing acting like in The Mandalorian or Jack Reacher or The Simpsons. There's this complete confidence in me that I can frighten an audience from the screen. And I was paid well for it, and I delivered. People were really frightened. When you see me in Jack Reacher, I'm really scary. But it's a performance. It's a performance. As a man, as a private person, my wife will testify that I'm a fluffy husband. But it's challenges that come at me, and then I take it. Inspiration, I don't know. In one of the film workshops that I did in Cuba, I had a young woman filmmaker, and after 3 days she was sitting in lotus position, and I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm meditating." I said, "Meditating?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm meditating to wait for the inspiration." And I said, "We are on day number 3. You have only 6 days left to make a movie. So you have, get up from your lotus position and go out and deliver." And so she delivered at the end. But
thank you very much. I think that's a wonderful way to end, talking about inspiration, because I think it's one of the wonderful mysteries about the one and only Werner Herzog. I've had a fantastic time, and I think you must have done too. And I'd like to ask for a round of applause for Mr. Werner Herzog.
Thank you very much, and not only those who asked as young filmmakers, many of you are also filmmakers or artists. Best of luck in your work and in your life.